Good morning. Welcome back to We the People. I'm your host, Chris Berg. Thank you for being with me on this fabulous, fabulous Friday. We've got a tremendous, tremendous show in store, and so excited to share with you our next guest, Scott Rasmussen, the polling master. He's got a new book coming out, Mad as Hell, how the Tea Party is fundamentally remaking our two-party system. He's going to be talking to us today about the new 10-point lead for Rick Berg over Earl Pomeroy. Mr. Rasmussen, thanks for joining We the People this morning.
It's great to be with you. I do have to point out that book is already out. You can get it at Amazon.com or any bookstores. So it's been out there, and it's been a fascinating season to be talking about the Tea Party.
Yeah, I guess it has, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you.
We were ecstatic to see your latest polls on the Berg versus Pomeroy. The feeling around is, hey, thing's kind of getting tight. We saw your last poll where we only had a 3-point lead, and we thought, boy, these debates, we don't know how it's going to go. And then to see it expand to 10 points, we were excited. So if you can please share with us just the information you have there and let us know what's going to happen for Rick Berg.
Well, right now the numbers show Berg at 52%, Pomeroy at 42%. I think what's interesting about this is Berg's level of support has been pretty steady lately, which is usually the opposite of what we see. Usually it's the incumbent whose numbers are steady, but Berg at 52%. If you average the last few polls, he's doing just a little better at his average. Earl Pomeroy, this is his weakest showing to date. I suspect it has more to do with the national political mood than anything else. Barack Obama is seen as doing a good job by just 41% of voters in the state.
Now, what's the magic of being over that 50% mark? I know that I've heard there's some magic there if you're a challenger. Can you share that with our audience, please?
Well, most of the time we talk about the 50% mark in terms of an incumbent, and we always say if an incumbent is below 50%, they're potentially vulnerable. And when you're 8 points below that mark, you're very vulnerable. For a challenger in an open race, it doesn't mean as much, but when you're over 50% against an incumbent, that's a good place to be, and it's one that very few races like this ever achieve.
What do you think happened between September and October? I mean, obviously it was close in September, and then now to see this gap expand, what do you think took place?
I think what we're actually seeing all the way through this is that the Rick Berg's numbers have been consistently just above or just below the 50% mark. I mean, we tracked that all the way back to March and April surveys. And the question has been, would Earl Pomeroy be able to overcome that, be able to take away some of those votes? It looks like at the moment he hasn't, and I think there is some slippage, some deterioration among Democrats nationwide as we look at the polls heading into the final 2 weeks. And look, North Dakota is a state where 59% of the voters favor repeal of the health care law. That's difficult when you're a Democrat running to defend that law. Just 29% believe the stimulus package helped the economy. Again, a difficult record if you're a Democrat in this election cycle. Got to point out, it's still more about the incumbent than it is about the challenger. As much as some people may think Rick Berg is just the answer for what the state needs, it really is much less about him than about a change being desired in Washington. In 2010, voters are going to do the same thing they did in 2006 and 2008. They are voting against the party in power.
Again, you're tuned in to We the People. I'm your host, Chris Berg. We've got Scott Rasmussen on the line with us, talking about the new poll of Berg versus Pomeroy. Please call in if you've got any questions. The number is 888-598-8464. Again, it's 888-598-8464, or locally 701-271-1100. Again, that's 701-271-1100. So we're 11 days away from Election Day. Is there anything Earl Pomeroy can do to gain back some ground and possibly win this election?
You never rule out an incumbent member of Congress. They have lots of ability to get people out. And I think what Pomeroy ought to be doing is the same thing he's been doing, try and get his message out, get as many of his voters to the polls as possible. The fact is that Berg is barely above the 50% mark. This can be a close election.
That's how there was still 5% undecided, and with a 10% margin, do you think that can expand at all, or where do you think they're going to lean towards?
don't have any idea. You know, if we had a sense of where they were leaning, we'd report that as well. And again, this is one of the reasons why it's still a competitive race. You know, when we talk about polling and we look at all these races, we know that there's fewer Democrats in the nation than there were 2 years ago. We know that midterm elections generally have a higher Republican turnout, a little older electorate. The thing that is difficult to measure precisely is the enthusiasm gap. We know from polling that Republicans are more enthusiastic and more likely to show up. We don't know how much more. If the Democratic base gets a little more fired up and reduces that gap, that's going to be the best thing, the best news of all for Congressman Pomeroy.
Scott, we've got a caller on the line, Jim out of Fargo. Jim, welcome to We the People.
Good morning, gentlemen. In my real job, I travel North Dakota a lot, and you know, up to this point, it seems like both Pomeroy and Berg have been beating each other up with negative ads. And what I'm hearing from people around North Dakota is they'd like to see from the Rick Berg campaign some positive things about who he is, his family, what he, you know, what his values are, and get away from the negatives. What is this? Is it time, or is there a time in a race where someone should quit the negatives and go positive, or is that just sort of how you got to play what your opponent is doing?
You know, the time to go positive is usually earlier in a campaign when you're first introducing yourself to people around the state or a district in some other races. Once negative advertising sets in, it begins to take hold. And the reason is that the people who are undecided, the people who aren't sure if they're going to show up and vote, are the hardest to reach through any kind of conventional means. And the best way you can get them to either show up and vote or not show up and vote for the opposing campaign is with negative advertising. And what we generally find and what we constantly point out to people is you don't get a mandate by winning an election. It's the way you perform in office. The reason Democrats are having trouble in 2010 is because of what the Democrats have done in Congress through the last 2 years. It's the exact same reason Republicans were in trouble in the 2006 and 2008 cycles.
Jim, thanks for the phone call. Scott, how about Governor Hoeven? He's got a big gap. I mean, how big are his coattails, and how much do you think that's going to impact the Rick Berg race?
You know, it's hard to say because the race, the advantage is so big. I mean, he's up by 43 points in our latest polling. It's not like there's a great urgency to get out and vote and believe that your vote is going to be the decisive one in the governor's race. So it is much more likely that the turnout efforts will focus on the House race.
We've got another caller on the line. In 1 second, I guess we're getting him locked up. But Brian,
okay.
Out of Wahpeton. Brian, welcome to We the People.
Oh, yeah, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I just have a question. You know, this morning now we hear that Pomeroy has a 10-point lead in your poll, and then immediately we hear in the Prairie poll that Pomeroy is leading by 10 points over Berg. How is this possible?
I have no idea what the other
where do these numbers come from? Yeah, I heard it reported that Berg was ahead by 10 in your poll, and then it wasn't maybe an hour later I hear, well, now Pomeroy's saying he's up 10. So, I mean, it makes no sense to me. And, you know, obviously your poll is way more reputable than Pomeroy's trumped-up poll, I'm guessing.
Well, you know, look, we work very hard on our polling. We're trying to provide an accurate sense of where the electorate is, and to be honest, we have enough work covering all the races we're doing, so we're not too focused on what other polls are out there, and I just have no way of knowing what that survey might be.
Brian, thank you for the phone call. Scott, can you maybe that was more of an internal poll. We have heard some rumors about some Pomeroy internal polls. Can you share with our audience the difference between an internal poll versus an independent such as yours?
Well, let's be clear. First of all, some of the absolute best polling in the nation is done are private polls for individual candidates. If you have a good pollster and you're running for office, they're going to tell you the good news and the bad news. They're going to tell you the bad news first, and they're going to tell you, what it is that's causing it. They're going to help you find ways to overcome it. When an internal poll gets leaked to the press, The suspicion is generally that it's, sometimes polls bounce around. There's always some statistical noise, just like our polls have shown slightly different leads at different times in this race. The presumption is that the internal polls that are leaked to the press are the best possible news for a candidate. Nate Silver, who's a liberal blogger for the New York Times, says that an internal poll is generally about 6 points more favorable to the candidate than the average poll.
Again, you're tuned in to We the People. This is Chris Berg with Scott Rasmussen on Rasmussen Reports, the polling master. And I saw that you had a new poll on the South Dakota House race as well. Can you share with us some information about that?
Yeah, that race is a 5-point race right now. Herseth Sandlin trailing 49% to 44%. This is a little different situation. She has positioned herself, having voted against the health care law. She has had some success at challenging the credentials of her challenger. Very close race, and I don't really have any sense of which way this is going to go, but it's a 5-point race with 11 days to go.
We've got a caller on the line. John, welcome to We the People.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I have a question in regards to the polling logistics of it. Basically with the technology these days and cell phones, and nobody's really having landlines anymore. How are they accumulating their information to get an accurate poll? I mean, it's got to be quite the challenge for these guys, since basically the only people that have landlines anymore are older generation, and because none of the younger generation does.
Cell phones are the biggest challenge to any polling organization right now, and they're going to be an especially huge challenge as we look to 2012, 2014, and beyond, because, initially the cell phone-only households were just younger voters, younger adults. It is beginning to move to an older population, to 30-somethings now, and even beyond that. From a polling perspective, and strictly from a polling perspective, there are two factors that make this less challenging in 2010 than it will be in the future. Number one is, again, those younger adults are primarily the ones that don't use landlines at all. They are not likely to turn out to vote very much in this midterm cycle. Secondly, younger adults, regardless of whether they use landlines or not, tend to be very supportive of Barack Obama, much more so than their elders. So as long as you have a reasonable sample of younger adults, and you can give them a proper weight in the survey, it should be a fairly accurate projection. But this is one of the areas that's changing. It is one of the challenges of 2010. It's one of the reasons that polls can't ever be perfectly precise, and it will be a bigger challenge for the industry next time around.
John, thanks for the call and thanks for tuning in. Scott, what's your feeling on the Minnesota governor's race?
Minnesota governor's race right now is very close. You got a three-way race there. Democrat Mark Dayton is opening up, the smallest of leads. He's up a couple of points. And it is a state that in many ways you would expect to lean to the Democrats. You've got, though, the president with just a 50% job approval rating, Governor Pawlenty with a 49% rating. So it is, very close at every level.
I just can't believe Dayton's, got a lead when his commercials, all they talk about is raising taxes. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I just look at the commercial and I go, really? That's your stance? Okay. Let's talk about the overall Republican victory. How many seats do you think they can pick up? Are they going to get the majority back?
It's highly likely the Republicans will win the majority in the House of Representatives this year. Probably going to pick up something over 50 seats in the 50 to 55 seat range. And it is, a lot of close races, so those numbers could move a little bit one way or the other. In the Senate, it is not likely the Republicans will get the majority. They are probably going to pick up 6, 7, 8 seats, get somewhere in the 47 to 49 seat range following this election.
Mr. Rasmussen, thanks again for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it. Again, it's Scott Rasmussen, author of Mad as Hell, How the Tea Party is Fundamentally Remaking Our Two-Party System. Be sure and go to Amazon. Check out his new book, and thank you very much, Mr. Rasmussen.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day yourself. Again, you're tuned in to We the People. I'm your host, Chris Berg, your voice for the Heartland. Keep your dial right where it's at, because we're going to be right back after this short break.